Kenichi, a middle-aged office drone, had his life flipped upside down when one too many energy drinks knocked him out cold at work. That dramatic collapse was the slap in the face he needed to quit his boring job and ditch city life for a peaceful farmer's existence in the countryside. But fate had other plans. While making lunch in his shabby cabin one quiet afternoon, Kenichi suddenly found himself in a mysterious, massive forest. Confused and mildly terrified, he stumbled upon a knight's skeleton, complete with a sword sticking out of its chest. As if things couldn't get weirder, Kenichi had a light bulb moment. He remembered an anime where the hero pulled up a status screen. Giving it a try, he was stunned when a glowing interface actually appeared. Surprise, he was in another world. The system was pretty handy. It let him store items and even buy food. Too bad Kenichi was flat broke. Desperate, he spotted the knight's sword, yanked it out, and traded it for some milk and bread. Feeling a little guilty, he used the rest of his trade points to buy a shovel, buried the knight with a heartfelt prayer, and pedaled off into the forest on his new bike. By nightfall, Kenichi was finally ready to enjoy a curry dinner when a pack of scary forest foxes crashed the party. Panicking, he tossed fireworks and shot at them with a slingshot until they finally ran off. Shaken but alive, he bolted out of there like his life depended on it. The next morning, Kenichi spotted a city on the horizon through a pair of binoculars. With renewed hope, he made his way there, narrowly avoiding a runaway carriage. The driver, a blonde merchant named Fu, felt bad and offered Kenichi a lift. After some casual chatter, they arrived at the city of Dea. Fu, grateful for Kenichi's help unloading goods, handed him a pouch of pepper. But there was a catch. The Spice Syndicate ran the spice game here, and carrying it was a big no-no. Fu ended up buying the pepper from Kenichi for 3 silver coins, leaving him both richer and very confused about this world's economy. At an inn, Kenichi ran into a new problem. He couldn't read or write the local language. Luckily, the innkeeper, Alia, was happy to help after Kenichi impressed her with his math skills. Thank you, basic arithmetic. He sweetened the deal with some candy and even sketched a portrait of her, earning himself a blush and some serious gratitude. The next day, Kenichi joined the Merchants Guild, groaning over the pricey registration fee but relieved when they let him pay in installments. Armed with his guild card and a new determination, he hit the market to figure out what sells and how to start making his mark in this strange, new world. Back at the inn, Kenichi decided his lumpy mattress just wasn't cutting it. Armed with determination and a hammer, he started crafting a proper bed. Alia, the innkeeper, watched from a distance, impressed by his carpentry skills and the care he put into every detail. Her attention soon drifted to the sturdy, unique clothespins he was using. Curious, she approached and asked if she could buy a few, complaining about how her flimsy ones always snapped. This gave Kenichi an idea. Why not sell these? The next day, he set up a stand at the market, showcasing his revolutionary clothespins. His neighbor, a savvy merchant named Anama, stopped by to grab a few, assuring him that there was no rule against competition buying from each other. Kenichi's clothespins were a hit. Customers flocked to his stand like moths to a flame, earning him more foot traffic and coin than he'd ever dreamed of. Even Anama thanked him for the extra business the buzz around his stand brought to her stall. By the day's end, Kenichi counted his earnings, jaw-dropping when he realized he'd made the local equivalent of over 15,000 yen. Clothespins, of all things, had turned into his golden goose. Just as Kenichi basked in his success, a tall, blonde man with a sword wandered over, oozing importance. After some small talk, he asked if Kenichi had any weapons for sale. Kenichi presented a sleek blade, but the man wanted something bigger. When Kenichi showed him a broadsword, the man was dazzled until he heard the price, 1 gold piece. He hesitated, torn between his love for the sword and his tight purse strings. Before they could settle the deal, a purple-haired catgirl appeared out of nowhere and licked Kenichi's face. Startled, he fell over, leaving the blonde man to explain that catfolk were common in this world. Soon, her siblings showed up, one of them snatching the cloth draped over Kenichi's stand, declaring they wanted to buy it. Though the cloth wasn't for sale, Kenichi saw a business opportunity and offered it for 9 copper pieces, even throwing in a discount. After some awkward haggling and math checks, the deal was sealed, and they left happy. The blonde man, impressed by Kenichi's honesty, finally caved and bought the broadsword. Meanwhile, across town, a maid who'd bought Kenichi's clothespins showed them to her boss, Primula, who saw their potential to make her mansion chores easier. Excited by the idea, Primula planned to buy more, and even pitched the idea of selling them herself, sensing a lucrative opportunity. That evening, Kenichi, craving a hot bath, decided to make one himself. He bought a barrel, planning to heat water over a fire, and mused that if it worked, maybe he could market it too. But the convenience of his online store left him uneasy. Where were these goods even coming from? Was there a hidden catch, like selling his soul? The next day, Kenichi returned to the market, adding shiny, fake jewelry to his stand. Margaret, the maid, showed up to buy a whopping 100 clothespins and eyed the jewelry, asking him to hold one for her. Just as he was about to pack up, the catfolk returned, sniffing around for spices. Their enthusiasm clashed with Kenichi's fear of the spice syndicate, so he declined to sell them any. Instead, he offered to share a meal outside town. That night, Kenichi, Anama, and the catfolk cooked a feast by the river. The fish, seasoned to perfection, blew everyone's minds. The catfolk loved it so much they craved alcohol, and Kenichi, feeling generous, shared a cheap bottle with them. They laughed, drank, and slept under the stars. The next morning, Kenichi returned to the inn, where Alia was visibly annoyed. She grilled him about staying out all night and wasn't buying his explanation about just hanging out with some catfolk. Noticing purple fur on his jacket, she jumped to conclusions, fuming that he'd chosen a catgirl over her. Later that day, Kenichi was setting up his shop when Margaret arrived with Primula in tow. Kenichi, distracted momentarily by Primula's beauty, quickly snapped out of it when he spotted Margaret. Realizing they were here to buy the necklace she inquired about, he retrieved it. Margaret paid up and handed it to Primula for inspection. Primula, utterly amazed, couldn't believe the necklace wasn't made of real diamonds. She asked Kenichi if he had more like it. Happy to oblige, he pulled out several pieces from his collection. Primula was so impressed both by the jewelry and Kenichi's handy item box that she decided to make a bold move. She revealed she was the daughter of the Mo Trading Company owner and invited Kenichi to meet her father. Kenichi hesitated. Big shots spelled trouble, but after hearing from Anama that her father was a well-respected man, Kenichi reluctantly agreed. He hopped into Primula's carriage, where she showed him some replica clothes pins her craftsman couldn't perfect. The clamps were tricky, and even Kenichi didn't fully understand the manufacturing process. Soon, they arrived at Primula's modest mansion. Inside, Kenichi met Mo, who wasted no time admiring the jewelry Kenichi brought. When Primula mentioned Kenichi's item box, Mo perked up. Turns out, Mo also had an item box, which he credited for his trading empire. Mo proposed Kenichi become the official supplier for his company. Kenichi, always the cautious type, figured Mo could have just resold his goods on the sly. Ma, however, explained that honesty builds trust and undercutting Kenichi wouldn't be worth the bad blood. Mo offered Kenichi 50% of the retail price. Though Kenichi could have pushed for more, he figured he was already raking in absurd profits, so he agreed. After signing the deal, Kenichi made over 1,000,000 yen in his first round of sales. Primula, smitten with his jewels, offered to buy some for herself, dropping 10 gold coins around $2 million. For the first time, Kenichi was rolling in an 8-figure bank balance. Feeling flush, Kenichi decided to fulfill his dream of a quiet forest life. He purchased a house blueprint from his store and scouted a spot in the woods. Inama thought his decision to live among wild beasts was strange, but Kenichi was determined. Armed with a weed whacker, he started clearing the area. Next came tree removal. Enter the chainsaw. After hours of labor, Kenichi had a pile of trees too large to fit in his item box. Cue more chainsawing into smaller logs, which worked like a charm. But the stubborn tree stumps presented a new challenge. Tired of manual labor, Kenichi splurged on a bulldozer, a cool 1.2 million yen. It wasn't until the purchase was complete that he realized his store didn't sell diesel. Panic set in, but Kenichi cobbled together a homemade fuel blend and tested it on a generator. Success. With the bulldozer roaring the next day, Kenichi made quick work of the stumps, enjoying every minute of it. A little later, Kenichi goes to meet Mo and Primula, hoping to sell them some salt and sugar for a nice profit. Mo tastes the sugar and loves it, but he can't buy it. Salt and sugar are controlled by the government, so buying from Kenichi would land him in serious trouble. On the bright side, the jewels Kenichi sold Mo earlier are selling like hotcakes. Mo wants more, and Kenichi sells them, earning himself 15 gold coins, about 3 million yen. Now he finally has enough to buy the log cabin he's been eyeing in his shop. A whole cabin for just 1.7 million yen. Sounds like a steal. But when Kenichi buys it, reality hits literally. Instead of a ready-made cabin, he gets buried under a pile of wooden planks and confusing instructions. It's a nightmare to figure out, but since he already paid for it, Kenichi gets to work. Luckily, the beast folk he helped earlier pass by and offer to lend a hand. With their help, Kenichi juggles running his stall and building his cabin. After weeks of work, the cabin is finally done, and Kenichi thanks the beast folk with a barbecue party. Even though the cabin is standing, Kenichi still has a lot to do: painting, setting up solar panels, and more. After another month, he finally finishes. The cabin is self-sufficient, with a fence, solar power, and even a bath, though he has to bike back and forth to fill it with water. The next morning, Kenichi visits Alia at the inn to let her know he's moving out. She's surprised but happy he accomplished his goal, even if it means she won't see him as much. The day after, Kenichi wakes up in his new cabin and decides to enjoy the great weather by taking photos of flowers. But his peaceful ride is interrupted when someone shoots an arrow at him. He crashes his bike and hides behind a tree as more arrows fly past. It turns out a group of beastfolk hunters mistook him for prey. Even when they realize he's human, they decide to attack anyway. Frustrated, Kenichi fights back with his slingshot and scares them off with fireworks and an excavator. After the chaos, Kenichi hears a wounded animal and finds a bobcat with an arrow in its leg. The poor thing growls at him but is too weak to fight as he carefully removes the arrow, disinfects the wound, and applies medicine. Knowing it won't survive alone, Kenichi takes it back to his cabin. The bobcat doesn't move much, and Kenichi worries. He tries asking the local wizard for help, but the wizard just tells him to sell the fur. Annoyed, Kenichi heads home and runs into Miley. She smells the bobcat on him and gets excited. Her people consider bobcats sacred. She follows him back to the cabin and is furious when she sees the injury, blaming the dog beastfolk. The bobcat tries licking its wound, so Kenichi puts a cone on its head. Miley is impressed by how good Kenichi is at treating animals and asks if he's a doctor. He laughs and says he just knows first aid. To thank him, Miley goes hunting and brings back birds, which Kenichi grills for dinner. Afterward, Miley asks to stay the night, saying the bobcat is more important than her work. Kenichi agrees, but there's only one bed. Miley suggests they share. A few days later, the bobcat is back on its paws, full of energy, and jumping on Kenichi's stomach to wake him up. A painful alarm clock. But Kenichi is just glad it's better. After taking off its cone, he sends it back into the wild to live its best life. With the bobcat drama behind him, Kenichi turns his attention to farming. He's got the tools, seedling, and ambition, but hauling water from the river for his crops? Hard pass. A well with a pump is the obvious solution, but he's too tired to deal with it today, so he crashes for the night. The next morning, Kenichi tackles the well project. He takes a break from his stall, drills into the ground, and installs an electric pump. Instant water on demand. That's when Primula shows up, uninvited but concerned because he didn't open his shop. Apparently, Miley spilled the beans about his log cabin. She's impressed by all he's built but can't stop eyeing the giant excavator. To dodge questions, Kenichi claims it's his summoned familiar. Now she thinks he's a magician and promises to keep his magic a secret. Since the city gates are closed, Primula decides to stay the night despite Kenichi warning there's only one bed. She notices the bath and asks to try it. After her bath, Primula falls in love with the warm bathrobe Kenichi gives her and begs to buy it. He caves and agrees to sell her a couple. She's convinced Kenichi has the potential to be the greatest merchant in the kingdom. But he shuts that idea down. He just wants a quiet life without nobles sniffing around. Primula promises to help him stay under the radar, but she still ends up sharing his bed for the night, though Kenichi learns from Miley's visit and decides to buy a second bed to keep things proper. Meanwhile, trouble's brewing at an outlaw camp where Shaga takes on a mysterious job that could mean bad news later. The next morning, Kenichi walks Primula home and chats with Mo about selling those bathrobes. Mo's interested, but when Kenichi brings up selling spicy items, Mo shuts it down fast. Margaret interrupts with accounting ledgers, and Mo explains he's switching to the Empire's new double-entry bookkeeping system. Kenichi is shocked this accounting method is straight out of Japan. It gets even weirder when Mo shows him a pitcher pump, another invention too advanced for this world. Kenichi realizes someone else from Japan might be in the Empire, and they're making waves. Over the next few days, Primula starts visiting Kenichi regularly. On one special visit, she mentions she's going on a supply run and won't be around for a while. The next morning, Kenichi gets a surprise visit from a knight, Norse Ball, the guy who bought a sword from him earlier. Norse was sent to investigate reports of a strange old man in the woods, but since he knows Kenichi, he assures him there's no trouble. Before leaving, Norse shares some juicy gossip. A mage in the Empire created mayonnaise and defeated a dragon with it. Kenichi immediately realizes this has to be another Japanese transplant and feels like he's seriously falling behind. One afternoon, Kenichi is chilling at his stall when he realizes Primula's caravan should be back soon. He plans to visit her later, but suddenly, chaos erupts in the town square. A caravan was attacked by bandits, and everyone, including Primula, was kidnapped. The bandit leader, none other than the infamous outlaw, Shaga. Everyone's too scared to take him on, and the knights won't be ready for days. Meanwhile, Primula's locked up in a cage, unharmed for now, but Shaga plans to sell her to some creepy nobles. Her dad, Mallow, is desperate and begs Kenichi for help. Now, Kenichi isn't exactly a fighter, but he cares about Primula, so he agrees to help. Problem: he needs money. Mallow hands over a bag of gold without hesitation, anything to save his daughter. Kenichi learns Shaga's hideout is 50 kilometers west of Dahlia, so he needs wheels. He summons a truck, really just a trick to make people think it's magic, and asks for volunteers to fight Shaga. No one steps up, Shaga's too scary. But then, the bobcat Kenichi saved last month shows up, ready to help. Miley and her beast folk buddies also join in, owing Kenichi for past favors. Even Norse Paul, the knight, shows up with his shiny new sword, looking for an excuse to fight. The magic shop owner, who's secretly a retired mage, and Anama, who can't fight but promises to cook and run away, round out the team. Kenichi registers as an adventurer, and the group heads out in his truck. Meanwhile, in Shaga's hideout, Primula shares her food with a starving slave girl and tries to convince her to escape. Back with Kenichi, the team stops to plan their attack. Miley scouts ahead using a magic radio, really just a regular radio. But Kenichi doesn't want to explain technology. The bandits are drunk and partying, so it's the perfect time to strike. Kenichi takes a mysterious pill from one of the beast folk and ends up on a wild trip. But he manages to drive the truck straight into the bandit camp. Chaos ensues. Miley snipes bandits, the old mage blows up the gate, and Norse Paul goes full action hero with his new sword. Kenichi even summons his backhoe to squish some bandits. They rescue the prisoners but find Primula held hostage by Shaga at the top of a tower. Shaga threatens to kill her, but Kenichi distracts him with a laser pointer, yes, really, and Miley shoots him. The slave girl uses magic to knock Shiva down the stairs, and Miley finishes him off with a headshot. Victory. Primula is safe, and the group heads back to town with the rescued prisoners. Kenichi even collects Shaga's bounty by storing the bandits' heads in his item box. Gross, but profitable. Back in town, Primula reunites with her dad, and Kenichi gets his reward, 861 gold coins. He splits it with the team, even though Anama insists she doesn't deserve a share. She does, however, ask to take care of Animan, the slave girl, but Animan decides she'd rather live with Kenichi because he gives her tasty food. Priorities, right? Kenichi tries to keep a low profile, but rumors about his exploits spread. He even invents bicycles, which become a huge hit. But trouble isn't far behind. Cloaked men start spying on him, and he narrowly escapes an attempted kidnapping using firecrackers and a crossbow. Mallow suggests Kenichi seek protection from the local lord, but Kenichi hates taxes and decides to leave town instead. Primula, determined to repay Kenichi for saving her, decides to join him on his journey. But Kenichi, ever the independent guy, leaves town without her, taking Animan and his entire house with him. Yes, his house. He rides off on a new motorcycle, helmets optional, apparently, and runs into an old friend, Fuyu, who's impressed by Kenichi's new life as a merchant and inventor. And so, Kenichi, Animan, and the gang ride off into the sunset, ready for whatever chaos comes next. Kenichi and Animan had been on the road for quite a while. They've been camping out, enjoying delicious meals, and living the slow life Kenichi always wanted. But since he has Animan to take care of, he's looking for a place to settle down. To scout ahead, Kenichi buys a drone and flies it up. He spots a river leading to a lake, with Est Strania on the other side. So, he, Animan, and their bobcat ride downstream. They find a breathtaking lakeside spot, and Kenichi decides this is home. After clearing some vegetation, he pulls a house out of his item box because why not? While setting up, he realizes he never named the bobcat. After some deep thinking, he settles on Vel. That night, he starts teaching Animan to read and write. She picks it up fast, but math, not so much. While she struggles, Kenichi looks into getting cheap diesel. He's been making his own with kerosene and additives, but remembers something about biodiesel from cooking oil. Clueless on how to do it, he buys some books to learn. Animan, eager to read with him, asks for a book. Since it's in his homeland's language, he gets her a children's book instead, and she dives right in. Meanwhile, Kenichi works on camouflaging the house, when he hears rustling in the bushes. Crossbow ready, he braces for trouble only to find Miley, his old companion. She tracked his scent all the way here. Having nowhere else to go, she declares she's moving in. Animan loves the idea, so Kenichi goes with it. Over dinner, Kenichi asks for news from Dahlia. Miley casually mentions that Norpal proposed to Primula, and they're getting married. Kenichi's happy for her, but knows he's too far to attend. Afterward, Animan shows Miley the Japanese book, and Miley loves it, even if she can't read it because pictures. Kenichi gets an idea. Books are rare in this world, and picture books could be a gold mine. But since Japanese tales might not click with the locals, he asks Animan and Miley if they know any legends. They excitedly share one about forest elves, and Kenichi decides it's perfect. He illustrates it, prints multiple copies, and gives the first two to the girls, who love them. Just then, a boat approaches. Not knowing who they are, Kenichi tells the girls to hide and aims his crossbow. Turns out, it's just villagers from Sanka checking if he's a bandit. Once they see Vel, their shocked bobcats don't befriend humans easily. Figuring Kenichi must be a good guy, they introduce themselves. One of them, Crouton, spots the book and buys a copy for his daughter. After they leave, Kenichi goes herb hunting, but Miley interrupts, wanting some alone time. Later, Kenichi resumes working on biodiesel. Wearing a hazmat suit makes him super sweaty, so he takes a river dip. Back to work, he synthesizes fuel and success. No explosions, Next mission: registering in Arancha's Adventurer and Merchant Guilds. Upon arrival, they head to the receptionist's desk. He hands over his ID, and the receptionist freaks out. He's the guy who took down Shaga. Kenichi urges her to keep it down, and she does. After leaving, they grab a meal in town, but the food is prison slop. Kenichi saves the day with his secret spice blend. While eating, he notices sketchy thugs and also spots Crouton and a little girl slipping into an alley. He ignores it until Crouton gets attacked. Not wanting trouble but unable to walk away, Kenichi throws on a plague doctor mask, launches fireworks, and calls it magic. The clueless thugs run for their lives. Crouton, relieved, explains that he used to be a government official who arrested Spice Syndicate members, and now they want revenge. His daughter, Mary, excitedly realizes Kenichi made her favorite book, and Animen, feeling competitive, claims she helped too. Over the next few days, Mary and her parents visit often, and she and Animen become best friends. But one day, Mary doesn't show up. Instead, a frantic Crouton arrives. Mary has Kiori fever, a deadly disease. Desperate, he begs Kenichi for help. Kenichi hands him painkillers for the fever, but knows she needs a cure fast. The only solution: seeds from a rare forest flower. Kenichi, Crouton, and another companion, Naimas, race into the forest to find them. Meanwhile, lurking in the shadows, the Spice Syndicate watches, and they're ready to strike now that Kenichi and Crouton are gone. Kenichi and the gang finally reach the river where the legendary checker flower seeds grow. Wasting no time, he inflates a raft and paddles out, snagging a seed in no time. Kron is beyond grateful, but the job isn't done yet. They still have to get this magical cure back to Mary. Before they can celebrate, Nyanea senses trouble. A pack of black wolves appears, cutting off their escape. Kenichi, being the seasoned wolf fighter he is, arms Kron and Mimas with swords and tells them to bolt back home with the seed while he holds off the furry menace. He chucks fireworks to distract the wolves, but a few break away, cornering Kron and Mimas. As Kenichi rushes back to help, he spots some shady figures in the trees, the same thugs from before, using a whistle to control the wolves. The fight gets intense, but Vel, sensing the thugs' bad vibes, ambushes them, knocking their leader, the so-called Dogman, off his feet. With the whistle out of his hands, the wolves freeze, their mind control snapped. Just as Kenichi thinks they've got the upper hand, a massive bear crashes onto the scene, sending the wolves running for their lives. The first to fall victim, the Dogman himself flattened like a pancake. The bear then sets its sights on Kenichi, but Vel jumps in, clawing at its face. Kenichi, ever the resourceful fighter, ups the ante, pulling out an absurd amount of fireworks. His plan? Scare the bear off. The bear's plan? Eat the fireworks. Boom. Instant regret. Stunned from the explosive snack, the bear takes a final hit from Kenichi's heavy machinery and keels over. Victory secured, Kenichi does what any reasonable adventurer would do: shoves the bear's body into his inventory. Back at Kron's house, the good news keeps coming. Mary is on the mend, thanks to the magic seed. Kron and his wife are eternally grateful, and even Kenichi has to admit, playing hero feels pretty nice. But there's still unfinished business. Pulling Kron aside, he reveals a secret deal he struck with the Dogmen patched him up, and in return, the thugs swore never to harm Kron's family again. The bad news? The other thugs still have a grudge. The safest bet? Get out of town. Kron agrees, but has nowhere to go. Kenichi, always a step ahead, has a solution. His buddy Norpal, a newly minted baron, is recruiting settlers. One letter of recommendation later, and Kron's got a fresh start. Fast forward a few days, and Kron's family begins their move. Meanwhile, Kenichi and Miley stumble upon an old friend, the Dogman, looking suspiciously like he's tying up loose ends. Turns out, he's been systematically taking out the other thugs to keep his promise. Ruthless, but effective. With his job done, the Dogman also plans to leave town. Later, Kenichi swings by the guild to offload the bear. The dissecting expert is blown away that he took down a tusk bear solo. but Kenichi plays it cool, chalking it up to luck. He keeps the meat and magic stone, selling off the rest. Since the butchering will take time, he heads home to tinker with a little side project making his own biodiesel. After some chemistry wizardry, the kind that would probably get your house condemned, he succeeds. His new fuel is dirt cheap compared to store-bought diesel. Satisfied with his mad scientist moment, he drops off food for M and Animan before heading back into town. First stop the old woman's shop, where his grimoire is finally ready. Turns out, it's got a built-in magic stone to power spells fancy. Kenichi doesn't quite get how it works, but that's a problem for future him. His last stop is the Adventurers Guild, where his bear parts are packed up and ready to go. He collects his reward, happy to close out yet another wild day in his ever-chaotic life. But as he walked through the city, a strange feeling crept over him like someone was watching. Turns out, he was right. His stalker, none other than Primula. Shocked, he asks what she's doing all the way out here, but Primula is more concerned with how he could leave without even saying goodbye. Kenichi tries to explain that he had to flee because of the nobles hunting him down, but she isn't buying it. Their argument starts drawing attention, so Kenichi suggests they talk somewhere private. Primula takes him to her hotel, where she immediately resumes scolding him for leaving her behind. Kenichi doesn't think he did anything special, but Primula reminds him that he literally saved her life. Still, Kenichi changes the subject, mentioning rumors about her marriage to Norse Paw. She confirms the talks happened, but says she turned down the engagement. That's not important now. What matters is that she refuses to go home unless Kenichi goes with her. When Kenichi refuses, she declares that she'll just stay with him instead. He can tell she's not bluffing, but he's more surprised that she even found him. Primula proudly explains that after he left, she checked every guild registry daily until his name popped up in another city. The moment she saw it, she hopped on a carriage and came straight here. Now that she's found him, she's not going anywhere. The next morning, Kenichi returns home with Primula, and at first, Animan and Meili are thrilled to see him until they notice his new companion. Primula instantly gets jealous, thinking he left her behind but took Meili with him. Kenichi quickly clarifies that Meili tracked him down on her own, and the only person he actually chose to bring was Animan. Primula sulks, but Kenichi reminds her she's getting jealous over a child, which helps her calm down, for now. Animan then makes Kenichi promise not to bring home any more women, which only makes Primula suspicious all over again. Later that night, Kenichi prepares a bath, but all the girls want to join him. Not in the mood for this nonsense, he simply buys a second barrel so there are two separate baths. Once everyone is cleaned up, he pulls out his newly purchased grimoire to test a fireball spell. He reads the incantation, but just as he feared, nothing happens. That confirms it. He has zero magic power and just wasted a fortune on a book he can't even use. Frustrated, he wonders if he can resell it. But while he's distracted, Animan picks up the book and starts reading it. And just like that, boom, a perfect fireball on her first try. The good news, Animan has serious magic potential. The bad news, they live in a log cabin.